Welcome to the Stop Suffering in Silence podcast with your host, Denise Walsh and Rachel Timothy.
Hey, my friends. Big welcome back to Stop Suffering in Silence. My name is Denise Walsh, and I'm here with co-host Rachel Timothy. And today we are introduced to a woman who's going to share a bit of her story. Here on Stop Suffering in Silence, we like to hear a bit of the hurt, bring awareness because we're not alone, but also we like to talk about the healing journey because healing is possible. And Rachel got introduced to our next guest a few weeks ago, and here we are ready to connect and hear her story. So big Stop SIS welcome to our next guest, Karen. Rachel, would you mind sharing how you guys got connected?
Yeah, and honestly, it was only a week ago. And I got introduced to Karen's son, amazing gentleman. And as he was hearing a bit about what we do with Stop Suffering in Silence, he was like, "You need to meet my mom." And he kind of left it at that. He's like, "But trust me, you need to meet my mom." And right then and there, we started to exchange phone numbers, and I got connected with Karen, and we began texting back and forth. And yeah, he was not wrong. She's got an incredible story that people need to know about. She's a strong woman, and I'm excited for us to hear a bit more about her and her journey and what led her to where she's at now.
She is a mother of two. She is grandmother of five. She is remarried and has gained two adult girls and another grandson due in October. So full family. She is currently an office manager for a dental practice, a mentor and community service in the recovery sector, and has always worked in recovery center and counseling women at the Hope Center. And usually there's a reason for that. So Karen, we'd love to hear a bit more about what got you into working with others in this way.
Thanks for having me. I just like to introduce myself. I'm Karen. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus, and I'm in recovery for codependency, and I'm a survivor of abuse. Hey, y'all. And that's probably how I learned to come about of my healing journey. It's a long story, but if I were to put it up in a nutshell, I would say that I was a confused child. I never knew what was wrong with me. I always felt like something was wrong with me. And I never knew why I made the choices that I made in life. There was so much abuse in my childhood and just abandonment issues. And never remembered my parents together. They were not married. So there was that constant ebb and flow of bouncing from household to household. So I never got any foundation laid in my life. It was just very confusing and chaotic. And I just really feel like I was in survival mode from the very time that I took my first breath of air until my early 40s to really gain the strength to know that no, nothing was wrong with me, but maybe I was abused. And I was like, what? Me abused? So just back up a little bit. When I was 5, my mom actually took me and my two sisters and away to Utah. And the reason she did that is because my dad was actually trying to gain custody of us because my mom neglected me a lot. And I was the parent. I had a mentally ill sister, and she did a lot of violent acts towards me and my little sister. And then my little sister, I was just mom to her because mom didn't take care of her either. So a lot of codependency just started in my early childhood years. My grandmother would come over and teach me how to cook and clean and take care of the baby's diaper. And she would just tell me what a good girl I was to do it. And I looked up to my grandma so much. So those words were like gold to me because I never heard anything like that from my mom. So caretaking kind of just was natural to me. So I continued to do that over the years and just take responsibility for people's mistakes and things that they did to me. Because if somebody did something bad to me, it's because I did something bad. And that was just how I thought because everybody else in the world was right. I had to be wrong.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because you've said two things that I think people think they know but don't really know. And one
Right.
is neglect. People hear, you hear physical abuse, you hear child sexual abuse, but neglect is abuse too. And parentifying a child, having a child try to take care of themselves when they're not cognitively, emotionally capable, you're basically putting adult stuff on a child who's not able to, whether they think they are or not, like they're not able to comprehend or figure out these adult emotions and life situations. And so the first thing you said was neglect. And I want to touch base on a little bit about what that meant in your case. Was it you were home alone all the time and had to take care of yourself? Did you have to get ready for school? Like, what did neglect look like for you? Because I think that's really important.
The first year of kindergarten, I did not make enough days to school to graduate or the kindergarten program. So that next year, I was a little bit older, and I remembered that. And I got me and my older sister up and started making sure that I got to school, that she got to school. I did take care of myself a lot, took care of her and the baby. And that neglect really made me feel uncared for and unloved. So again, what did I do wrong? What's wrong with me to not receive that love?
And then the other, yeah, I think it's like a unsaid or underlying, it can impact all aspects of your life, because there's this need and this void that's not necessarily filled. And so feeling like you have to step up, but then also feeling like if you fell down, nobody would catch you, in a sense. Rachel, is there anything you want to add about that first before I move on to the second word she said that I want to dive into?
I think it's something that happens way more than we want to recognize in our kids, in our youth, and school systems and stuff. And the fact that you had to get yourself to school at that young of an age, and not only were you, in my opinion, receiving neglect from your mom, but where was the school to recognize that this is what was happening? And in a way, they neglected you as well.
Step up, and that's kind of why she took off with me and my other two sisters. So there was an attorney that my dad had hired because he was going to try to get custody of me at the time. And there was a very big snowstorm in Ohio, and I was going to school. And me and my sister were walking to school and went by the courthouse, and that same attorney stopped me. And he knew who I was. And that picture is a picture in the newspaper, which got a lot of recognition in the small town we were in, because I didn't have coat and proper clothing on for a winter storm. So it was very, very close at that point in time that my mom was going to lose me to my dad. And that's when she pretty much kidnapped me and took me and hid me in Utah for a couple of years away from my dad. So, and then told me that my dad didn't want me. So that neglect turned into abandonment from my dad. So nobody really cared or wanted me. Dad threw me away, and mom don't care.
Right.
Wow.
That's confusing to a child. I remember, Rachel, recently we were talking and you were like, oh my goodness, like the child has to put themselves to sleep. Like that would sound scary. I would be scared. And you just think of these little things that we take for granted, and having to do it yourself as a child could, like you said, you've been in fight or flight mode your whole life. You're tense. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that's where codependency sometimes comes in, because it's like, what can I do to make sure that mom's okay? And so you're constantly looking at mom to say what needs to happen so mom's okay, so she's not yelling or she's not mad or whatever the case may be. Tell me a little bit about that second word that I heard, which was codependency, that I think happens way more than we think as well, and people might not totally understand what it means.
Dependency to me is doing for others what I should be doing for myself. That's the best way I can over the years explain it in my own language. And I would just run around taking care of others when I should be taking care of myself. And that's not as in a childhood aspect, that's as an adult, because that carried over into the adulthood of where I wanted to please everybody around me so I could be safe, that nobody's going to come and hurt me. And if I could create that environment of safety, then I was safe. But we all know that control is just an illusion, and I didn't have that power to do that. So when it comes to it hitting me in the face in my 40s, of wow, here I am and I'm still unhappy and I've done all this stuff, why aren't I happy? Why isn't my family happy? Why isn't my husband happy? That I was able to make this connection, because I was still that little scared girl. I'm searching for my worth, searching for my identity, not knowing where it was going to come from. I thought it came from other people. And that's such a lie.
Yeah. Well, and in a way, as a child, those foundations do come from other people. And I think that's why you were still looking for it as an adult. I mean, that's just my own thoughts. I don't know if that's psychologically true, but we need those adult figures to lay those foundations of truth. And when that doesn't happen, you're then left grappling and searching in other areas to form those foundations.
Well, they run to drugs, they run to alcohol, they run to shopping and gambling. I ran to people pleasing. And, I'm currently under a journey of overeating. I got to a point to where codependency wasn't the big problem, but overeating is now. So it has been a process for me, but it's always linked to that worth, to that identity, to who I really am.
I describe codependency as like me, like if you're okay, I'm okay. And if you're not okay, I'm not okay. And so it's like, I'm going to make sure that everybody around me is okay, because if they're not, I'm not okay. And so we teach a lot about 100% responsibility with a 90-day U-turn. Of course, that meaning like taking responsibility for ourselves, but it also means to let other people take responsibility for themselves as well, which is something to let that, as a codependent, we get to let go of, because we're so wanting to have that control, like you said. But I'm not surprised that there was potentially addiction happening too, because I find that codependency, there's probably a lot of roots, but addiction is certainly one of them. So you lived this way for 40 some years, thinking everything's fine, but yet it's not fine. What happened when you were 40 to say, all right, I got to get some help?
Because of how I was brought up, I found somebody that just fit in that world. I will add that when I started this journey and I was asked to no longer be a victim, I was shocked. But my husband of 20 years, he was just never happy. Everything was everybody else's fault. If the house wasn't just so, there was a lot of abuse for 20 years in my marriage. And I put up with it because it was all my fault. I got to fix this. I got to rescue it. The insults and the abuse that was coming at me was proof that I was bad, because that's how I learned things. And family and friends, they saw it. They would come by every now and again. Maybe you should leave, or you need a shelter. You need to get your kids out of this situation, all the things. But I didn't believe it, because number one, I believed the lie that if my mom and dad had stayed together, maybe I wouldn't have turned out so bad. So I was going to do anything and everything to stay with this man, to be there for my sons. And, 20 years of that is a lot. And there was a lot of damage on my kids as well as me. But I got involved in a prison ministry where basically women were having babies in prison, and their families were used up. And, the choice was foster care or respite care. And this ministry provided respite care. And I just had this overwhelming feeling that I needed to be a part of it. And my ex-husband really didn't want me to be a part of it. That was like that first time that I stood up for myself and I said, I'm going to do this. And so I did it. And it just painted this beautiful picture of a newborn baby, not having anything or anyone, and just trying to be the liaison between the foster parent and the prisoner, and went for 2 years and mentored this woman and took care of her child. And she got out of prison, and within 5 days turned over custody to this family. And I was just screaming, and I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? You have everything in the world laid out for you to have a better life, to have freedom from your hurt, hang-ups and hang-ups. Um, and I said to myself, how can she walk away from this help? And when I said that out loud, I was going through my own journey of getting out of this marriage, because it was very, very abusive. And it was just like the Lord said to me, that's you. I've paved a road for you to get out of your misery, and you're not taking it. So I think that was the first day out of denial, that I was just used up. This family had poured into me so much through this ministry and this little boy, and I just couldn't ignore it anymore. I was miserable, and I had the desire of change. I had the desire of happiness. So I went to the counselor for the very first time at church, and he just looked over and he says, when are you going to quit being a victim? And I'm like, me? A victim? Are you kidding? You have no idea what I've been through. I'm strong. I can get through everything. But I was a victim. I was hurting so bad. And that was my first step of recovery. And he just gave me some information for counseling and Celebrate Recovery. And I said, Celebrate Recovery? Wait, that's for the drugs and alcoholics. And he says, no, it's every hurt, habit, and hang up. And you're more like those people than you think. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm used up. I'm going to try whatever I can. And, 15 years later, I can attest that that program works if you work it. But I discovered even very early on through this program of working out my own memories, had to get put in a timeline, because I would remember things sporadically, and I would remember things thinking that they were a dream. Well, they weren't dreams. My very first memory that I can go back to was being molested in a dark room. And that being molested started there, but it carried on throughout my whole childhood, of friends, family members, sisters. There is a lot of abuse, physically, emotionally, sexually, spiritually. There's been so much abuse in my life, and I never knew it.
Right.
I wasn't surviving. I used to say, I'm such a good survivor. I'm a survivor. But no, I wasn't even coping. I was so spiritually, emotionally dead. I didn't know I had three emotions: happy, sad, or mad. That's all I knew. And man, life is so much more full of those happy emotions. And if I don't have capability of feeling the negative ones, how do I have the capability of finding the good ones? So it's just like the process of bringing it all together and becoming a whole person. And it is possible to become a whole person. I feel whole today.
Oh, amen.
So it sounds like part of the healing process, I mean, was to create that timeline and think about who am I and where did I come from, and kind of start putting the pieces together. Is that something that you had to work through?
Not perfection, it's process. People, they instantly want to be fixed and instantly want to be happy, but there's a lot of work that goes into it. Like I said, I've been working this journey for 15 years now. And, after I left my ex-husband and got the divorce, and, there was a lot of stuff to continually work on. That was just the beginning of getting out of the abuse. And, I wouldn't find till several years later what it meant to live in freedom.
Mm.
We often say you cannot heal if you're still not safe. And
Mhm.
so it's not surprising that once you got safe and you are no longer needing to live in fight or flight mode, your body could start to relax and some of those memories could pop up, which then allows you to make sense of the past potentially.
Not only sleeping pills to be able to sleep, but I was on a plethora of emotional drugs, for like anxiety and depression, and being anxious and all of those things. I take nothing now, not
Oh,
even,
cool.
not even a melatonin.
One thing that my pastor said this Sunday at church is it's one thing to be rescued and to be set free, but it's a whole other thing to be restored. And so I think that's kind of what you're talking to. Like, it was one thing to get out of the abusive relationship, but then it's a whole other ball game to now have to focus on the restored piece and getting your life back.
Kind of tend to look over on the redeeming side, because restoring is to what it was before. I don't want that, but I want to be redeemed.
Ah, yeah, amen. Yeah, I like it.
I am redeemed. I'm made new. And is life perfect? No, but it's manageable. And that's the difference in being in recovery or out of recovery. Is your life manageable? And I was not managing.
What would you say are some key moments on the healing journey for you?
Open and honest with somebody. We're so scared to be judged. And, if I was open and honest about how I was being treated at home, I mean, how would people look at me? They would look at me as weak, and why are you putting up with that? And, it always came back to what other people were going to look at me about. But what the truth is that we need to just be honest and let God work out the details, because the truth will set me free. And it really has set me free, to be honest about my hurts, habits, and hangups. I'm very mindful of having a sponsor. Not walking this recovery process alone, because if I could do it on my own, I would have done it, right? Somebody needs to go before me and bring me along the way, because I was clueless. And I've had the same sponsor for 15 years. I've been blessed. She has poured so much life into me and helped me understand why I think the things that I do, and why I feel the way I do. And she never told me anything. She just shared her life with me. She never gave me a list of do's and don'ts. She just shared her life. And, that's how I pour back into people. I don't tell them what to do. I don't have my right answers. I surely don't have yours, but I'll point you to the one who does. His name's Jesus, and he's amazing.
I love it.
So it sounds like being honest and then having accountability and a community and a roadmap. And I think that's key, to have a roadmap to follow, and then community that helps keep you on track and can support you if you derail. And it's not a flip of the switch. It's a path and a process, like you said. And so I love that you have noticed that's what you need and then consistently choose it.
Add though, you know how we get to that place on that mountaintop where we think we have arrived and things are getting better, things are getting good. And that kind of happened to me. That did happen to me, not kind of. I decided I'd get on a dating app or two and start dating again. This might be fun. I'd find a Christian man that'll treat me good. That was only a year and a half after my divorce, and it was not the right time. Trust me. I found somebody even more abusive, even quicker to it. And so, long story short, there he did hold me against my will, for about a 3-day period, with head to toe beatings. And I was like, how in the world did I arrive to this place again? How did I get here so quickly, so fast? And I did, through that process, turn him in, go through court battles. But thanks be to God, that court battle produced an opportunity for me to get some really amazing counseling where I received EMDR therapy, which really was a game changer in my anxiety and trauma, because trauma was swimming around in my body and I didn't realize it. I could keep it down. I could hold it down for just a point and then it would just shoot up and I couldn't control it. And I was hitting the deck at loud noises. It was in constant, hypervigilance, what's happening kind of thing. It just like brought everything back that I was healing from to the forefront of everything. So that EMDR therapy really did file that trauma away, to where it wasn't swimming around in my body. So when something happened to me, everything in the world that has happened to me up to that point didn't come with it. It was just that one thing.
That makes life more manageable. You said that's kind of the thing that you look at. It's not that life's not going to happen. Life's always going to happen, right? But can I handle it? Recently, I heard the word stress. Let me think of, what was it? I'll Google it to remember, but it was something about stress. And it's like, can I handle the stress that's absolutely going to come? And you can, if it's one stress at a time. But if it's the whole life stress, like you said, all waving over at once, no wonder we're overwhelmed, confused, emotionally, triggered, etc.
Get to that point to where I could see life change in the program, but there is still something more. And I feel like, that's what we do. We get stuck in our ways and we do just one thing over and over again, thinking that it's doing what it needs to do. But I've been able to broaden the perspective of my healing path to different areas and different ministries, and even in service that I gain healing. Because I serve a lot. I'm getting ready next week to go to Ireland, and we're going to be singing in prisons and doing street ministries. And, I've been to Haiti and orphan care and Dominican. So everything becomes a service out of my pain. That's how God recycles my pain, is that I can give it away now.
Oops, we lost her. Hopefully she'll come right back.
Yeah.
But I think this is an important conversation, right? Because as she mentioned, Karen's lived for decades with her house on fire. We see a lot of survivors like, I'm fine, everything's fine. But living in fight or flight mode, in kind of that freak out mode all of the time, reacting big to all of life's triggers. And so being able to recognize that and then being able to get help, I think, are really two important things.
Yeah. And it sounds like, she used the phrase open and honest, but in similarity, stop suffering in silence. It was that silence that she was living in with so many different hurts. And if she had just talked with people, hopefully, not always, some people don't always respond the way they're supposed to, but hopefully it would have given her almost like permission, like, you can leave. This isn't not, she made the comment that maybe they would think she's weak. That could be some people, but I would hope that people would say, no, like, you can get out of this, and it's okay to get out of this.
Well, we have found the louder you are, the more people say, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. I've found something else. I've been through something similar. They come up and share their stories and their hurts as well.
Yeah. She's a strong lady. My goodness. Extremely strong lady.
One of the things that we were sharing, Karen, when you were dark on our screen, was the fact that we've seen when the louder Rachel is, the more that she shares her story, the more connected she becomes to people, either saying they've been through something similar or they now understand pieces of their story a bit better. And so it's a reminder that sharing our stories is a connective experience. And I know you experienced that too. When you started telling people, it sounds like you were able to start healing. It was the suffering in silence that keeps the trauma brewing.
Where we were, it's like I keep it by giving it away. That's where I was at. I keep my recovery by giving it away, because going into those places where people are hurting, people are neglected, need to see that is hope. And when I share it, it reminds me of my own hope that I have in Christ, because He's the author and perfecter of my faith, and I have nothing without Him. I have nothing without Him. So having that relationship with Him in an honest way that's tangible helps me succeed in life, because it's His will for my life. It's like I tell people all the time, how do you get what you want? You want what God wants, because He promises to delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. And if we're delighting in Him, well, our desire is going to be His desire, right? So that's how I get what I want. I want what God wants. And that's not selfish.
Could you share, at what point did you find Jesus and start a relationship with Him? Like, where did that fit into all of the neglect and different things? I'd love to hear that piece.
Okay, please. Yes, thank you for asking that. So basically, going through recovery made me realize that I had a codependency relationship even with God. I got saved at 22, and I walked the aisle, and I got baptized and everything. And from that point on, I said I had a lot of making up to do. So I would do anything to please God. And I did that by staying in the unhealthy relationship with my ex-husband, by doing all the things. Well, I was doing a lot of things that he didn't call me to do. They're just things that I thought I needed to do to please him. So really, I got saved when I was 22, but I got freed when I was 42. Because it was when I was 42 that I had the understanding of God died on the cross for me, not what I could do for him. I think so much in our journeys in the world, even with the worth issue with our parents not loving me and caring for me. Well, maybe God that was that way too. And I believed a lot of lies that God was this, that, and the other, but he is nothing but a gentle, kind Savior that just wants to have time with us.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
So what would you say to somebody who is in a domestic violence situation right now and doesn't know how to get out or what they should do to start the healing process?
Because so many people had so many different answers for me, but I wasn't ready for them. And it wasn't until I was ready to make the change that I could truly change. And I found that in recovery. You can't force anybody to change. They've got to be ready to come to it. It's just like the man that was sitting at the well, the pool of healing, and the beggar that was brought there every day for, I think it was 37 years or whatever. And Jesus says, well, do you want to be well? Get in the pool. Don't you want to be well? Because he would have somebody to come and put him beside the pool. Well, why didn't he just let the person go ahead and put him into the pool? Because that was his answer. Because I don't have anybody to put me in the pool. Excuses and get in the pool and get healed. But that beggar was not ready for it. I wasn't ready for it. But when I was ready for it, I was ready to dive in. And that's where that support comes from. In the last 15 years that I've had people coming in and out of recovery, I've seen people that'll show up one day and I'll never see them again. Or somebody will show up and I'll sponsor them for a year and then they leave and they come back 5 years later. Oh, you're still here. Yep, I'm still here. And it's just where people are ready. You got to watch and you got to pray and you got to seek God. And I'm very careful of not telling people what to do, but let them know that I'm here when you're ready to change. Ask me questions. I'll give you answers that I have, that I've experienced, but you need to get along with God. He's going to figure this out for you.
And I think that's a great reminder for supporters as well, is that we can't force someone to want to change. And it has to be on their terms in a sense. And so there's a space of, I'll be here when you're ready. And if you want to ask questions, I will answer, but you're in charge of you.
I'm going to love you. I'm going to support you. There's been times where there's been volatile situations where I've had to make the calls as a responsible citizen. I've been in those situations where I've had to be responsible for the safety of children, and that's hard call. It really is, but again, it's something that's not taken lightly at all.
And so what are you doing now to add value? I know you're volunteering quite a bit. You're active in the community service and recovery world. Where else are you active, and what are you doing to give back?
A lot of mission trips. I do counseling at the Hope Center. And the Hope Center is basically a drug and alcohol 1-year program, and they're basically furloughed from jail. And I just sit with them once a week and mentor them biblically and life situations and stuff like that. I'm very, very busy with my grandchildren. I feel like that I'm seeing like different things pop up in their lives that happen in my child's lives, and I'm able to bridge that gap between me and my sons in parenting. This is what I did wrong for you. Remember this. So I'm really able to communicate with my children in a very honest, loving way, to where they receive it, to where I really feel like the Lord is using me to break some generational curses. And that just makes me want to cry, because he has been through so much as a child, and to see him overcome and where he's at today is just another testament of doing the next right thing, and God will work the rest of it out. I had to let him go homeless. I had to quit rescuing him and providing ways out for him and feeding him and giving him the shelter and his drug addiction. And I was thankfully in my recovery at the time that I knew that was the right thing to do. I had to not be his Jesus. Mm-hmm. And now Jesus is his Jesus. And he's living a very, very prosperous life.
Wow. Rachel, is there anything you want to add?
My dogs continue to bark. That's why I've been muted. But I just appreciate you, Karen. Thank you so much for sharing the hard stuff and the good stuff and Jesus along the way, and then the way that you give back. It's an inspiration. And I know people's faces are popping in my head as I'm hearing your story. I'm like, oh, they are going to be so appreciative of this podcast because it's going to be exactly what they need to hear. Just the encouragement piece. So thank you for being brave and sharing your story and letting God use it for his glory.
Sorry about all the technical difficulties. I would love to come back on and chat with you guys again. You're amazing in the work that you do. I commend you both.
Thank you.
I have a coach who's going to write a book about basically parenting with unhealed trauma. And it reminded me, your story reminded me a bit about her story in the sense of she didn't really start the healing process until her kids were older teenagers and things like that. And now she is growing leaps and bounds and is able to be a great example to them even in the midst of all that they've experienced together. And it's just a reminder, healing is powerful, no matter if you're 20 or you're 40 or you're 60, like healing ripple effects and impacts everybody in your circle. And as you said, breaks generational chains. And so healing is it's not easy. If it were easy, we would have already done it. But it's one step at a time. And as you've said, having a community, accountability, and a path to follow is key. So you're not doing it alone. When we're isolated, we second guess, we're wishy-washy, we're uncertain, we get in our own head, and we need to be around other people to help pull us out of our own junk sometimes and help us with that next right step. So thank you, Karen, for sharing a bit of your story today. We'll put her email in the description box if you're interested in reaching out to her and want to relate in some way. She'd love to connect with you. And Karen, is there anything you want to add before we say goodnight?
I just want to say one more thing, okay? Because I was never going to get married again, ever. Didn't even want to date. But God sent me my prince. And we've been married for 5 years. And he has been an amazing husband. Something that I thought would never be possible. And I rejected him for 2 years. No. But God. He said yes. And we serve the Lord in spirit and truth every day of our lives.
Amen.
Well, it's powerful to hear that healthy relationships are possible. And one time I told Rachel, we're turning the magnet around, because right now you're attracting chaos. And we're turning the magnet around. We're going to start repelling it. Yes. Because you're right. As a trauma survivor, that's, like you mentioned, you go to what feels normal, comfortable, even if it's chaotic. And so as you start to heal, calm feels normal, right? And then you can start really having healthy relationships in a new way. So that's really encouraging. All right.
Y'all, I've enjoyed our time together.
Thank you so much, Karen, for hanging out with us today. You guys share your aha moments or thoughts, questions you have for Karen in the show notes or the comments below. We look forward to continuing the conversation in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe here at Stop Suffering in Silence. We talk about the hard journey, but then we also talk about the power of the healing experience, because it's happening and it's available for you. So have an amazing day, you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much for listening to this powerful episode of Stop Suffering in Silence. If you are interested in booking Rachel to speak at your event, workshop, school, church, or organization, then please email racheltimothy.stopsis at gmail.com. If you are interested in donating to the Stop SIS ministry, then please check out the link in the description box or show notes below. Or you can email stopsis@protonmail.com. And finally, if you are currently suffering in silence or you know somebody who is, then check out our website, stopsuffering.org, to learn more about our online programs and resources. We will always recommend that you also reach out to your local resources and find a counselor that you can trust, because nobody is meant to suffer alone. Have an amazing week, and thank you for being here.